Hello and welcome to Computer Tech and More. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Unifan SL140 version 2. Let's get right into the graphs and the data. So first up is the case simulation test. The case simulation test can be looked at in a couple of key different ways. So the most important for you is what size case do you actually plan on buying. This is specific towards air coolers. If you're looking at AIO and liquid coolers, I'm going to get into that in a second. And this is also specific towards a front-to-back airflow design cases, not ultra-compact ones, specific for the 6-inch mark, so small form factor cases that suck in air from the sides and blow it out the top. If you are looking at those ultra-small cases, compact ones, you do want to get fans that are more pressure-oriented. So I would pay special attention to the data that is for the CPU air cooler, because those fans ranked higher are going to be better at pressure optimization and would be thus more applicable, better suited for that sort of case design. I just want to give that general disclaimer out here. So these measurement points, the 6, the 9, the 12, the 6, the 9, the 11, and the 14.5 inch mark are representative of different size cases, measured from the front of the case, or the front case fan, to the rough position of your CPU socket, because you want the maximum airspeed hitting that front CPU fan as possible. So I'm going to get into that in a second. First, the 6-inch mark is a small form factor case. Again, a front-to-back airflow type design. They do exist, but it's basically an ITX case. The 6-inch mark is also representative of a short throw distance, meaning like putting your a fan or multiple fans on the bottom of your case that blow up into your GPU, or an inverted case where they blow down into your GPU. Basically, that sort of application. The 9-inch mark is representative of your compact towers. Think a case that can hold a standard ATX motherboard with a GPU of the length of that motherboard. Again, a front-to-back airflow design. We had the 11-inch mark is representative of a mid-tower case, something like the Corsair Stormtrooper looking case, Corsair 550D, Mesha 52C, something like that fits into the 11-inch category. The 14.5-inch mark is representative of your large towers. Think longer cases and bigger cases. Something like the Fractal Design Torrent fits into that size category. So I have a control fan. It is 3 parts A12X25 to 1 part A14. This control fan is meant to be an idealized fan to indicate above it is good to excellent performance, below it is good to poor performance, depending on how far off the beaten path it is. So we have a bunch of Unifan SL series in here, but the key one we're going to be taking a look at today is the SL140 V2, this red line. It's right in line with the other fans, drops off, and then kind of levels out again. I'd put in an okay performance category. It's honestly too far away from the control fan for me to say that this is a good case airflow fan. At 100% PWM fan signaling, it drops further back. What the heck? The original SL140 outperforms this fan. It's just its RPM doesn't get high enough to really be a good case fan. So in the case simulation test, how does the V2 compare to the other fans around it? Well, right here in the steel line, it's kind of in the middle at noise normalized values at the 6 and the 9-inch mark. But once we're looking at bigger cases, it is underperforming compared to other fans. So if you're in a smaller case, it might be just fine. But in a bigger case, probably wouldn't really recommend it. It is towards the bottom. You may have noticed that the graph just jumped and there's a second set underneath it. I'm finding just a couple of mistakes while I was recording this video, so I'm hoping to implement it while I'm doing it. If you've depending on when the Infinity one comes up, there are going to be a couple mistakes in there. I didn't get the V2's max PWM fan signal quite right in a couple of the graphs, so use this one for that one. I do apologize for those errors. Anyways, it's still towards the bottom of the graph, so it's overall not a great result. Noise level for case simulation test, 9-inch mark. The 9-inch mark was chosen because I needed airspeeds over 0.5 meters per second, and the 9-inch mark gave me the most reliable data with regard to that. And it still started to show, and it still showed separation between the fans that had a good concentrated airflow, and ones that tended to spew off to the sides. Mine, it doesn't show it as much as we would see at the 11-inch mark, but again, I needed the airspeed over 0.5 meters per second. So we do see that the V2 is sitting towards the bottom of the graphs in this case airflow test. And now for comparison's sake.
You're going to have to ignore the fact that the version original does not have the fan spinning. I ran out of, well, fan headers. So, but luckily the RGB isn't built into the fan blade, so we get a good visual comparison between these two fans. So, well, here they are. I would say they look pretty much identical. I mean, obviously one is black, one is white, but the scheme for how the lighting looks basically near on identical. And as we saw from the fan blade, basically overview between the two, that's where you get some minor differences between the two, as well as maybe some slight motor differences. But the RGB appearance is near and identical.
Now we're looking at airspeed through my CPU air cooler. My cooler is the Noctua U12A. Yes, I'm aware that these fans are 140 millimeter class fans, and they will not normally work with a 120 millimeter class heatsink, but I just slap it up against it, hold it firmly against it, measure the airspeed traveling through it, which would be the case no matter what kind of heatsink radiator you're using. So it still gives the performance of how well it is at blowing air through it. So now that that is said, better fans tend to be better fans are top left, worse fans are bottom right, and my control fan is still the 3 parts A12X25 to 1 part A14 here in this red line. So we do see that the the SL140 V2 is overall doing pretty well in terms of its blade design. It is outperforming my control fan, which is definitely an excellent thing for it to do. On the right side here, we have noise versus airspeed. So this is again is now a noise efficiency graph. It is how much noise does this fan generate for a given airspeed. The V2, listed in this blue line, is slightly outperforming my control fan, which indicates that it's overall pretty good, but it's a little bit under, bounces around the control fan at higher RPMs. So I'd still call it a good type fan. Now, how does it compare against other fans? Again, we have the Unifans highlighted in yellow, and over here, this key on the side is an airspeed, so 225 watts equals 2 meters per second. I did a number of tests on my CPU air cooler, letting the CPU get to thermal max, measuring the airspeed at different PWM fan signals, letting the wattage stabilize at that PWM signal, so that I now could equate airspeed traveling through the cooler to a wattage, but this is only true for my CPU air cooler, the U12A, and for my CPU, which is the i7-11700K. So how can you use this data? Well, you can use it as a comparison standpoint. So like the Hurricane 140, it's moving this much air through my cooler, but in general it would be ranked in this position. If you upgrade to a better fan, let's say the Infinity, well, it's going to push more air through your cooler than one of these lower ranked fans for the same noise level. So the SL140 V2 is ranked towards the top of the graphs, indicating once again that it is a top performer in this type of category. At 100% PWM fan signaling, RPM does matter, and we see that the V2 is at the bottom. It just doesn't have the RPM to achieve those higher performance. So it could be that if you're in a full radiator system, so let's say two 360 rads, that you don't need that top end airspeed. You would be perfectly sufficient with this particular fan. But I can't make that determination for you. It is up for you to decide if that's acceptable or not. So I guess let's just move on. So, all right, my editing skills are so-so. I had to go back and do a correction. I had my data lined up incorrectly. The SLV2 is sitting right here, while previously it was ranked right towards the bottom. So this is at 100% PWM fan signaling. So it's actually doing, well, it's still towards the bottom. So for its given RPM, it's actually in line, kind of in line where it should be. So I just wanted to do that quick correction so that the data makes more sense for what we're seeing with this noise versus airspeed. I caught that while I was actually recording. So quick fix. Now we have cooler airspeed versus decibel rating. So this is where you could determine what sort of performance characteristics you actually care about. So this purple line right here that's bolded is the V2, and it is towards the top of the graphs, but not quite at the tippy top. And based on this curve, if it had just a little bit higher RPM, it could be a top performer, but it just doesn't quite get there. Now we're on to CFM testing. CFM testing is probably my least favorite test in the way most other reviewers tend to talk about it. So most other reviewers tend to talk about CFM testing as, hey, this fan has a high CFM number, thus it is great for case airflow. That is not how it works. So now that all of that is said, RPM versus CFM, so blade efficiency, we do see that the blade design is very efficient versus my control fan. The control fan here is based off of the A14. It is no longer A12X5 combined with the A14 because this testing apparatus for 120s and 140 millimeter class fans are different. So this is purely based off of a 140 millimeter class fan. The V2 is lined up almost perfectly, a little bit under my control fan, so it's indicating it's not quite as efficient a blade design in this type of test. In terms of noise analysis, it is ranked fairly well, beating out my control fan. How do they compare and noise normalized values? Well, the V2 is sitting right here, smack dab in the middle of the graphs, just a hair behind the Infinity, so it's overall doing pretty well. Once again, while making this video, I found several errors, so I need to do a quick update. So right here is the V2. It is no longer highlighted. I'm sorry, you have to look at my mouse cursor. I'm circling it right now. So it is sitting towards the bottom of the graphs, indicating that it doesn't perform particularly well in this test. We have the Infinity at a similar RPM, just a little hair above it in performance. So this goes into consistency's sake for this performance. What's interesting is that the slower spinning SL140 original is outperforming both of these two fans at 100% PWM fan signal. So that is kind of an odd result, but it was repeatable and testable. Next, we have CFM versus decibel rating. And we have the V2 sitting here in this purple line. And it is doing kind of okay. It just doesn't have the same maximum RPM, so it's much more limited. But depending on your set of circumstances or set of uses, it may not matter. Now we're on to value proposition. Value proposition for the SLV2 is a $35 fan. So value proposition is simple calculation, is performance per dollar. So if you're on an ultra tight budget, you want the maximum performance per dollar. As a note in all of these tests, everything but the CFM test can be directly compared to each other. In the CFM test, 120s and 140s cannot be directly compared against one another because they use a different testing apparatus. So primarily in the case simulation test for the 6 and the 11-inch mark, we're going to be taking a look at the noise normalized results. So we do see that the V2 is a little bit better value than the other SL fans. And these are all based off of standard retail pricing, as I could find it off of Amazon. So do note that. So depending on what you care about, so the RGB, the extras, the top value, it may not be a great pick. Overall, it's not a great value. But certainly RGB on it is pretty. At the 11-inch mark, it's kind of fallen behind further, in all honesty. So it's not a great case airflow fan like we saw in the graphs earlier. How about through the CPU air cooler? Well, noise normalized results, it's kind of just barely above average, but that doesn't mean it's a great value. It's a far cry away from the top value picks. So again, that extra category is the RGB, whether you care about its appearance. At 100%, it's doing okay. And CFM testing, it's below average. Okay, so we're going to just do the conclusion now. So these fans, the Unifans, are basically appearance first, performance second. So if you're looking for a good value pick, they aren't it. If you're looking for a value pick to get some RGB bling in your case, they aren't it. So they're really for people who have extra money to spend and care more about appearance than they do about value. They're not terrible performing fans, except in case airflow, so they're good on heat sinks and radiators. So really, they're for people who like and want their visual appearance first, and they're happy with the performance that they generate. All right, so at the end of every video, I do like to show off my raw data. This data does belong to me. I am the one who generated it. It takes me about 1.5 to 2 hours to just generate this level of detail in the data. It takes more time to generate the graphs and update the graphs and make the PowerPoint presentation for filming the video, and of course time to record the video itself. So if you want to use this data for your own particular use, meaning you put it into Excel yourself and you can calculate your own graphs, value propositions, whatever you like, you're more than welcome to do so. However, if you want to use it in any sort of video, journal, written, whatever sort of publication that goes out into the public space, I do ask that you reference me and my channel and ask permission first, because I worked long and hard to generate this data. If you're wondering why you should trust me, I'm an aerospace engineer. I have a master's degree in aerospace engineering with a background in or a concentration in computational fluid dynamics. So in other words, fluid mechanics. So propulsion, fan design, wing design, that sort of fun stuff, airflow through a tube. That is my background and speciality. So this is a fundamental of interest of mine, which is why I'm making these videos. I like comparing data, and I was unhappy with the way other reviewers were doing fan testing. So I decided to throw my hat into the gauntlet and see what came out. If you got suggestions on how I can improve these videos and for the future, please leave in the comment sections down below. I will try to implement changes to make them more enjoyable to watch. If you've got suggestions for fans for me to test, please leave that in the comment sections down below. I will try to acquire it. For ease of my purchasing, I do ask that they be available on Amazon. I am in North America, United States of America, so it will need to be available on that Amazon. There are several fans I wanted to test that are only available in Europe, so that's a little bit frustrating. Other than that, I got a Patreon page. Every penny that you all help me out with goes directly into improving my whole testing methodology for these fans, so that hopefully I can implement that into the future with better sound testing, with a dedicated microphone, a little sound isolating chamber, and a bunch of other upgrades. And as soon as I reach the monetary mark that allows me to make that purchase, I will go ahead and do that and retest every single one of these fans again with a whole new testing methodology. Other than that, subscribe for more content, check out my Patreon page, and have a great day. I hope to see you next time here on Computer Tech and More.